What do you do when the phone doesn't ring, when the message never comes, when the silence is louder than words? That's when the real battle begins, and it's not with them, it's with yourself. Silence. It looks small, it looks empty, but make no mistake, silence is the most dangerous battlefield you will ever step on. Because when it's quiet, when there's no sound, no call, no text, no footsteps coming back to your door, that's when your mind starts screaming. That's when the fight begins, not with them, but within yourself. You see, arguments are easy. You can shout, you can cry, you can slam doors, you can release the fire that's burning inside of you. But silence has no outlet. Silence forces you to sit with your thoughts, your fears, your insecurities. And that's a war most people are not ready to fight. That's why silence breaks people. That's why silence exposes people. Because silence doesn't lie. It shows you the truth about who's stronger, your emotions or your discipline. When two people go no contact, the surface looks calm. Outsiders don't see the struggle, but inside, it's a war zone. Every day, the silence tests your willpower. It whispers to you, send that message, just one, it won't hurt. It tells you, call them, they'll answer, you'll feel better. That's the trap. That's the battlefield working against you. The silence isn't just about what they're doing. It's about what you're going to do in response. Will you fold, will you break first, or will you hold your ground? Because in this battle, the first to move loses. The first to cave in gives away their strength. And the battlefield of silence is merciless. It doesn't forgive weakness. But here's the thing, silence is not just an enemy. It's also your greatest teacher. In the middle of that battlefield, you discover things about yourself you never knew. You learn how much of your happiness you've been outsourcing to somebody else. You learn how addicted you are to their presence, their validation, their approval. And you learn just how badly you've been running from yourself. Silence doesn't let you run. Silence locks the door, throws away the key, and forces you to sit down face with your own reflection. It asks you, who are you without them? Who are you without their voice in your ear? Who are you when it's just you and the quiet? Those are questions no argument will ever make you ask, but silence does. That's why it's the most dangerous battlefield, but also the most powerful one. Think about it. When there's noise, you can hide. When there's chaos, you can distract yourself. But silence strips you down. It leaves you with no mask. No excuses, no escape. That's why it feels so heavy. That's why it hurts. Because silence shows you the truth. Whether you're dependent or disciplined, whether you're broken or becoming whole, whether you're a prisoner of your emotions or the master of them. And let me tell you something. Most people run from this battlefield. They'd rather break the silence, even if it costs them their pride, just to escape that mirror. They'll send the text. They'll make the call. They'll chase, because chasing feels easier than facing themselves. But every time they do that, they lose. They lose not just to the other person, but to themselves. Now understand this. Winning on this battlefield doesn't mean you feel nothing. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're cold, heartless, or detached from reality. No, winning doesn't mean the silence doesn't hurt. It means you let it hurt, but you don't let it control you. You let the silence press on your chest, but you still breathe. You let the urge to reach out crawl up your throat, but you swallow it down. You let the tears fall, but you don't break the line. That's strength. That's what it means to win in silence. It's not about pretending you don't feel. It's about proving that what you feel won't make you fold. And once you understand that silence is the battlefield, something shifts inside of you. You stop seeing no contact as punishment and you start seeing it as preparation. Every quiet day that passes, you get sharper. Every unanswered night, you get stronger. Every time you resist the urge to break, you build a muscle most people never even touch: self-control. And the longer you stay on this battlefield without surrendering, the more the silence stops being your enemy and starts becoming your ally. The silence that once tormented you now trains you. The silence that once felt like torture now feels like freedom. And that's when you realize you're no longer fighting against the silence. You're fighting with it. You're using it. And in that moment, you stop being a victim of the battlefield and you become the master of it. Breaking is easy. Anybody can do it. Anybody can pick up the phone when the loneliness gets heavy. Anybody can send that message when the silence starts to suffocate. Anybody can cave when the craving for connection feels stronger than their pride. Breaking takes no strength. Breaking takes no courage. Breaking is surrender, and surrender is the path of least resistance. That's why most people do it. That's why most people never make it through the battlefield of silence. They fold too soon, they give in too quick. They think the pain of holding the line is unbearable, so they choose the instant relief of breaking. But what they don't realize is this: that relief comes with a price. And the price is your power. Think about it. When you break no contact, when you're the one who sends the message, you give them the upper hand. You show them you couldn't hold. You show them they had more power over your emotions than you had over your own. And whether they respond with kindness, indifference, or silence, it doesn't matter, because the truth has already been revealed. You broke and they didn't. That's the mark of weakness in this war. And the one thing silence always exposes is weakness. Anybody can break. That's why it doesn't impress. That's why it doesn't earn respect. Because breaking is ordinary. Endurance, on the other hand, that's rare. Endurance is where the real strength lies. Endurance is looking at the temptation to reach out and saying, "Not today." Endurance is hearing the voice in your head begging you to give in, and you answer back, "Sit down. We're not doing this." Endurance is the art of waiting, the discipline of holding the line, the patience of knowing that every day you don't break, you're proving something to yourself. You're building a wall inside your character that no storm can tear down. And listen carefully, endurance isn't about them. Endurance isn't about who misses who, or who texts first, or who shows up in whose inbox. Endurance is about you. It's about you showing yourself that you don't need them to breathe. You don't need them to feel worthy. You don't need them to survive. But let's be real. Endurance hurts. Endurance burns. Endurance will make you question yourself. It'll make you wonder, am I being stubborn? Am I losing something by waiting? It'll make you feel like the silence is swallowing you whole. That's the price of endurance. It's not glamorous. It doesn't look good on Instagram. It doesn't get you applause. It's you alone with your thoughts, wrestling your own demons day after day. And most people aren't willing to pay that price. That's why they break. That's why they fold. But the ones who endure, the ones who grit their teeth and outlast the storm, they're the ones who rise different. They're the ones who carry a strength inside them that breaking can never give. Endurance is not about avoiding pain, it's about mastering it. It's about taking the ache in your chest, the itch in your fingers to type that message, the tears in your eyes, and refusing to let them drive your actions. Endurance is self-mastery. And self-mastery is what separates the strong from the weak, the disciplined from the desperate, the few who rise from the many who fall. Anybody can break. That's why most do. but the few who endure. They walk out of the silence unshaken. They walk out with their dignity intact. They walk out with a lesson carved deep into their soul, that their strength doesn't depend on anybody else's presence. And here's the truth. This battle doesn't crown the one who acts first. It crowns the one who resists longest. Endurance wins wars that breaking can't. Because when the silence stretches on and both sides are waiting, the one who endures sends the loudest message without saying a word. The message is clear. I don't need you to complete me. I don't need you to validate me. I can stand in this silence and not be broken by it. That's power, that's endurance, and that's why so few ever taste it. Too many people get it twisted. They think no contact is a weapon. They think it's a way to punish the other person, to make them suffer, to make them chase. That's the wrong mindset. If that's why you're doing it, you've already lost. Because punishment is about them, and power is about you. Punishment says, I'll hurt you for hurting me. Power says, I'll heal me by choosing me. See the difference. Punishment is reactive. It's still tied to what they did, to how they moved, to the choices they made. But power is proactive. It's not about their actions. It's about your decision to reclaim your peace, your dignity, and your strength. That's the real essence of no contact. It's not about pushing them down. It's about lifting yourself up. When you cut contact, you're not sending a message to them. You're sending a message to yourself. You're saying, I will not beg for what should flow freely. I will not compete for what should be given willingly. I will not deplete myself to fill someone else's cup. That's not punishment. That's clarity. That's you drawing the line between what you deserve and what you'll no longer tolerate. And when you make that choice, something inside of you shifts. You stop looking at the silence as a loss, and you start seeing it as a gain. Because every moment you don't break, you're not punishing them. You're empowering yourself. You're saying, I matter too much to keep shrinking for someone who couldn't see my value. That's not revenge. That's revolution. But here's where people get stuck. They think power is loud. They think it has to roar, has to be seen, has to be noticed. Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay silent. Because silence is a language of its own. Silence says, I don't need to explain myself. Silence says, I don't need to prove my worth. Silence says, if you can't see it, if you can't honor it, then my distance will speak louder than any words ever could. That's not punishment, it's elevation. You rise above the noise, and you let your absence echo louder than your presence ever begged to. Think about it. Punishment always seeks a reaction. Punishment wants them to notice, to feel guilty, to come crawling back. But power doesn't need their reaction. Power doesn't need their apology. Power doesn't even need them to understand, because power isn't about bending them, it's about building you. No contact is your training ground. It's your gym. Every day you don't reach out, every hour you don't fold, you're lifting a heavier weight than most people ever dare to pick up. And slowly, day by day, you're sculpting a version of yourself that no one can play with, no one can shake, no one can break. That's why no contact is misunderstood. Weak minds think it's punishment. Strong minds know it's protection. Protection from re-entering cycles that destroy you. Protection from chasing people who don't choose you. Protection from betraying yourself just to feel a little less lonely. That's not punishment, that's preservation, and preservation is power. Because when you protect your peace, you protect your future. When you protect your dignity, you protect your destiny, and the one who protects themselves is the one who grows, while the one still chasing reactions stays stuck in the same loops, learning the same lessons, paying the same price over and over again. So remember this: no contact isn't about making them feel your absence. It's about making yourself feel your presence again. It's about saying, I exist beyond them. I thrive beyond them. I have power that doesn't depend on who walks into my life or who walks out. That realization. That's where the game changes. That's where the silence stops being a punishment and starts being proof. Proof that you don't just survive without them, you rise without them. When the noise is gone, when the distractions fade, when the phone stays dark and no notifications come through, something powerful happens. The spotlight turns inward. Suddenly, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to dump your attention but on yourself. And that's the moment most people fear the most, because we live in a world addicted to noise. People stay busy to avoid themselves. They scroll, they text, they cling to conversations just so they don't have to hear their own thoughts. But silence strips all that away. Silence says, sit down, look in the mirror, face yourself. And that's not easy, but it's necessary, because until you face yourself, you'll keep running back to people who don't deserve you, just so you don't have to sit with you. Silence reveals your dependence. It shows you how much of your self-worth you've been outsourcing to someone else's attention. That's why no contact feels so hard in the beginning. It's withdrawal. Withdrawal from their validation, their presence, their approval. You start to realize how much of your happiness was tied to hearing from them, to being seen by them, to being chosen by them. And that realization hurts, but pain has purpose. Pain opens your eyes to the places where you've abandoned yourself. Silence makes you ask, why do I feel empty when they're not here? Why does my value drop when they don't respond? Why am I so restless when I'm left alone? Those are the questions silence demands you confront. And the answers are what set you free. Because once you stop resisting the silence and start listening to it, you discover something. The emptiness you feel is not about them. It's about you. It's about the parts of you you've neglected, the passions you've buried, the confidence you've forgotten, the identity you've lost. Silence hands you a flashlight and forces you to search those dark corners of your soul. It doesn't let you hide behind "they don't see me." It makes you admit, "I stopped seeing me." That's where transformation begins. When the focus shifts inward, you start realizing you don't just miss them. You miss yourself. The version of you that smiled without needing permission. The version of you that felt whole without someone else's presence. Silence brings that truth to the surface, and though it stings, it's the medicine you need. This inward shift is uncomfortable because it forces accountability. When you're focused outward, it's easy to say, "They did this, they made me feel that, they're the reason I'm hurting." But silence flips the script. It asks, why did you stay when they showed you who they were? Why did you give when they weren't giving back? Why did you tie your worth to someone else's actions? Those are heavy questions, but those are the ones that break chains. Because once you stop pointing the finger and start looking inward, you take back control. You can't change them, but you can change you, and the silence is the space where that work begins. And here's the beauty: once the focus is inward, the power is inward too. You stop obsessing over what they're doing in the silence and start asking, what am I doing with mine? Instead of wondering if they miss you, you start wondering if you miss your own potential. Instead of scrolling to see if they've moved on, you start building so you can move forward. Instead of sitting in the silence waiting for it to end, you start using it to grow. That's how silence becomes a gift, Because while they're out there living the same patterns, you're in the quiet forging a stronger, wiser, more grounded version of yourself. Eventually, the silence that once tormented you becomes the silence that strengthens you. You begin to crave it instead of fear it, because now, when it's quiet, you don't hear anxiety, you hear clarity. You don't feel emptiness, you feel presence. You don't beg for someone else to fill the space. You fill it yourself. That's the shift. That's the transformation. Silence turns from an enemy into an ally. It stops being a punishment and becomes a pathway. And every day you choose to embrace it, you walk closer to the version of yourself you were always meant to meet. Impulse is loud. Impulse screams, "Do it now." It grabs your chest, it shakes your hands, it floods your mind with urgency. Impulse tells you, send that text, break the silence, reach out, because this feeling is unbearable. And in the moment, impulse feels unstoppable. That's why most people obey it. That's why most people fold in the silent battle. Because impulse is fueled by emotion, and emotion is strong. But here's the truth. Emotion is temporary. It rises, it falls, it passes. What lasts is the choice you make in the middle of that storm. And that choice comes down to one thing: discipline. Discipline is quiet. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg, it doesn't rush. Discipline whispers. Discipline says, wait, breathe, hold the line. Discipline is the ability to feel the full weight of impulse without moving an inch. And that's where the power lies. Because anybody can follow impulse. That takes no effort. But holding still when everything inside you is pushing to act, that's rare. That's strength. That's where the winners of the silent battle are made. Because the war isn't about who feels more. It's about who controls what they feel. Understand this. Impulse seeks relief. Discipline seeks results. Impulse is about now. Discipline is about tomorrow. Impulse wants the quick hit, the temporary comfort, the instant gratification of breaking no contact. But discipline wants the long game, the strength, the growth, the dignity that comes from standing firm. And every time you choose discipline over impulse, you're telling yourself, I value my future more than I value my feelings in this moment. That mindset right there, that's what separates the weak from the strong. That's what builds unshakable people. But don't mistake discipline for ease. Discipline hurts. Discipline feels like fire in your chest, like tension in your muscles, like a weight pressing down on your willpower. Discipline means resisting not once, but over and over again, every time impulse comes knocking. And impulse doesn't knock politely. It bangs on the door at 2 a.m. when you're lonely. It whispers at dawn when you wake up thinking about them. It nags you when you see their name on your screen, when you drive past that place you used to go, when a song plays and stirs your memories. Impulse is relentless, but discipline is resilient. Discipline says, I hear you, but I won't move. And every time you choose discipline, you grow stronger while impulse grows weaker. The real power of discipline is that it builds trust, not with them, but with yourself. When you resist impulse, you prove to yourself that you can be relied on. You prove that your emotions don't own you, you own them, and that kind of self-trust is priceless, because once you trust yourself, you stop fearing the silence, you stop fearing the temptation, you stop fearing the battlefield. You know you can handle it. You know you can hold the line. And when you carry that trust, nothing anyone does can shake you. Because discipline has already trained you to stand firm when everything inside you wanted to run. And here's the paradox. Discipline doesn't cage you, it frees you. Impulse keeps you trapped in cycles, chasing, breaking, regretting, starting over. Discipline breaks the cycle. Discipline says, no more, not this time. And in that moment, you step into a higher level of yourself. The level where you don't react, you respond. The level where you don't break, you build. The level where you don't chase temporary comfort, you claim permanent strength. And that's why, in the silent battle of no contact, discipline will always beat impulse. Because impulse fades, but discipline lasts. The hardest truth to accept is this: the real fight is not with them. It's not about whether they text you back, whether they miss you, whether they think about you in the silence. None of that matters. The war is not out there. It's in here, inside your mind, inside your chest, inside the space between your desire for connection and your need for self-respect. That's where the battle rages. And until you win that war inside, you'll keep losing on the outside. You'll keep breaking the silence, keep giving away your power, keep chasing validation that can't sustain you. The battlefield is internal. And that's where victory or defeat is decided. See, silence doesn't test them, it tests you. It doesn't expose their weakness, it exposes yours. It doesn't reveal their patterns, it reveals your discipline. That's why so many people crumble. They're still fighting ghosts on the outside while ignoring the enemy within. The fear of being alone, the hunger for validation, the ache for closure. These aren't things another person can fix for you. They're battles only you can fight. And when you realize that, everything shifts. Because you stop waiting for them to give you peace. And you start realizing peace is something you build inside yourself. That's where the war is won. Not in their inbox, not in their presence, not in their silence, but in your soul. Think of it like this. If you can't sit alone in silence without breaking, then you're not fighting them. You're fighting yourself. You're fighting your own impatience. You're fighting your own insecurities. You're fighting your own addiction to being needed, being wanted, being seen. And until you face that, until you conquer that, no amount of chasing or clinging will ever bring you peace. Because peace doesn't come from outside. It comes from mastery of the inside and the war of no contact. That's exactly what it's designed to test. It strips everything away until it's just you and your mind locked in combat. And here's where it gets real. The war inside isn't fought once. It's fought every single day. Every morning you wake up and your first thought is them. That's a battle. Every night you go to sleep wishing for a message that never comes. That's a battle. Every hour you hear the whisper, just check, just reach out, just fold. That's a battle. And each battle you win builds you. Each temptation you resist strengthens you. Each day you survive in silence without breaking proves something to yourself, that you are not a slave to your emotions, that you are not a prisoner to your longing, that you can choose dignity over desperation. That's victory, and that victory happens inside, not out. But don't get it twisted. Winning the war inside doesn't mean you stop caring. It doesn't mean you erase the memories, the love, the bond overnight. It doesn't mean you're made of stone. No, winning inside means you feel everything, but you let nothing control you. It means the memories may flood your mind, but you don't drown in them. The loneliness may knock on your door, but you don't invite it in to rule you. The urge may burn in your chest, but you hold steady. That's inner strength, not the absence of feeling, but the mastery of it. That's when you know you're winning, not when you feel nothing, but when what you feel doesn't break you. And here's the truth most people don't want to face. No contact is not about who calls first, who misses who, or who caves. It's about who conquers themselves. The war is not against their silence. It's against your own impulses. The war is not about their actions. It's about your reactions. And if you win inside, if you conquer yourself, If you master your own mind, then it doesn't matter what they do. They can call, they can vanish, they can move on, they can come back. It won't shake you. Because the war was never with them, it was always with you, and once you win that war, you become untouchable. So remember this: the silent battle is not about them, it's about you. It's about whether you will let impulse defeat discipline, whether you will let loneliness override self-respect, whether you will let silence break you or build you. No contact versus no contact is not a game of waiting. It's a game of becoming. And in the end, it's never about who reaches out first. It's about who rises stronger. It's about who walks out of the silence with their dignity intact, their peace restored, their spirit unshaken. The war is not out there, it's in here. And the moment you understand that, the silence is no longer something to fear. It's something to embrace, because silence, when mastered, is not emptiness. It's evidence, evidence of your strength, evidence of your self-control, evidence that you are more powerful than your pain. So hold the line, stand firm, endure the silence, and let it forge you. Because in the battle of no contact versus no contact, the winner is not the one who gets the call, it's the one who never lost themselves in the waiting.